And we have people here from all across the political spectrum, which I think says a lot about me running as an independent candidate. And I will tell you that I've talked to 2,000 or 3,000 people in the district already, handing out my business cards. And I've only had maybe 2 or 3 people tell me that they're not interested. I always just start by saying, hi, I'm Joe Sweeney and I'm running for US Congress in our district as an independent candidate. And then I don't say anything. And very interesting responses from very conservative people to very liberal people, but they're all interesting. And a lot of the people will just immediately ask, have you ever run for office before? And I'll say no. And they said, you have my vote. No, it's true. I would say probably 10% of people have that response. And then others want me to go into issues more, and I'm happy to discuss that with them. But the thing that we all have in common, regardless of where we are on the spectrum, is that we know this two-party political system is not working. And I believe that it's the root cause of all of the problems in our country. These two parties are owned. Most of our congressmen and women are just figureheads. And it's just a matter of what corporations and special interest groups they're bought by at any given time for any piece of legislation. There's probably only 20 or 30% of people in Congress that I could, say, yeah, they're independent and they have some integrity and will try to do the right thing whenever they can. And the thing about the two parties is that they try to convince us, using their media machines, that they are polar opposites, but they're not. If you look at where the majority of our money goes, which is to the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, Big Pharma, where all the money is, the two parties are basically lockstep on those. There's very few detractors when it comes to those issues. And then they try to divide and polarize us on all of these other issues. And we need to break that system. I'm running as an independent because I've always been an independent. I've been registered as an independent voter, and I'll show you in a second, for over 10 years. So I do not lean left, I do not lean right. I try to solve problems on an issue-by-issue basis. And I guarantee that if I make it to Congress, neither party will know what I'm going to do on any given bill. Neither party will be able to count on me. I'm not going to be reporting to party leadership or will be strong-armed by the party's influence and the party's donors. It's been 33 years since an independent was newly elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, since 1991. And since then, our country has declined rapidly. We no longer have moderate politicians on either side of the aisle. And I'm trying to break that system and show that it can be done even in a very deep blue district like this one here. This is an example, California is an example in general, of where a state has gone too far left, and we're seeing the ramifications of that. And a lot of the Democrats that I've been talking to are seeing that too, and they're starting to wonder, they're starting to realize that something's wrong and want to come back towards the middle. But a lot of them don't want to move all the way to the right, just because we all have this thing in our head that everyone in the other party on the other team is a bad person. Right? It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you are. Everybody thinks that because of how much they've manipulated and polarized us. And so I'm offering a breath of fresh air. I'm offering an alternative in this year's election. And I'm going to show that politicians who keep getting further left and further right need to not be worried about being primaried on the left or primaried on the right in the next election. They need to worry about being generally electioned down the middle by a candidate who votes issue by issue and has solutions and tries to do the right thing all the time. And I've never run for office before. I grew up in Longville, Minnesota, which is in northern Minnesota, a town of 156 people. So the nearest traffic light to me was 45 minutes away. Yeah, that's how rural it was. And so, I've always done very well academically, always been top of my class, high school, college, and then went to grad school later. And I was actually Minnesota State speech champion. That was my crowning achievement of my high school career. So I know how to talk when I need to, even though I haven't dusted off these skills since I was 18 years old. I'm doing my best to pull them back out of the closet. I graduated with degrees in biochemistry and mathematics from Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then after that I came to grad school at Berkeley and got my master's in chemistry. So I'm a hardcore math and science guy. I've done the hardest stuff that you can do academically: quantum mechanics, statistical thermodynamics. That's why I'm a quick learn on things. And obviously, we were talking earlier, I forgot who was saying it, but they're like, oh, guy from Texas, you were saying these people in office are not bright. So I'm hoping to change that. Yeah. So in order to address the spending that's out of control, we have $34 trillion in debt, and the interest payment alone on our debt is $1 trillion a year now, which is more than our defense budget. $1 trillion divided by 330 million Americans is $3,000 for every single American just to pay the interest on our debt now. If you have a family of 4, that's $12,000, and that's just average. So if you're a high income earner, you're paying tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars just to service the debt that the government has racked up. So the reason why the spending is out of control is because they always pass continuing resolutions and omnibus bills. And I have videos about that explaining that those are the vehicles that they use for corruption, because they just say you need to pass this bill or all of these government agencies are going to get shut down. You're going to stop paying our military veterans. You're going to shut down our schools. They tug on the heartstrings of people and they leverage that against them in order to keep the massive, unaccountable budgets going for all of the government agencies. So we need to get back to single subject spending bills. This is what Congress is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to look at every program and agency and make sure that they're all working and only give them money if they are and they're moving our country forward. We need to start doing zero-based budgeting. Instead of just asking how much did this program or agency get last year and how much should we raise it, we need to say, is this program even necessary? They should start with a budget of $0 and only fund the things that are going to move us forward and stop wasting all of our tax dollars. And so this is one area where I wish that more people would understand that investing in politicians, in candidates who will stop this spending, will get them ahead financially. Because think about it, if you were to donate a couple $1,000s to a candidate and they replace someone who just keeps voting for omnibus bills and continuing resolutions, you're going to save money in the long term. This is the result of not voting for candidates that restrain spending. I have a zero illegal immigration policy. A lot of you are asking about that. This is the #1 issue of the people when I talk to them in the district. So this was one of the areas where I support former President Trump's position. He got illegal immigration under control. So we need to pressure the administration, whatever administration is in 2025, to reinstate those administrative policies to shut it down. We can immediately reinstate Remain in Mexico. The president has the authority. He could stop the border crossings in 10 minutes if he wanted to. They're choosing not to. We also need to negotiate with Mexico and the Central and South American countries where all of these migrant flows are originating and going through. I gave an example earlier at the table where we're getting hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants from Venezuela. And at the same time, we have crippling oil sanctions on them. So we need to begin negotiating with them to stop their mass migrant flows up to our country in exchange for reducing those sanctions. On average, between 2011 and 2020, there were 450,000 illegal immigrants coming into the country. 2021, 1.9 million, 2022, 2.7 million, 2023, 3.2 million, and this year it's going to hit 4 million. That's almost 10 times the amount of illegal immigrants coming into our country than in the last decade. Okay, this is not sustainable, and we've already seen it in the news with New York City and Chicago. Their budgets are being destroyed. Their health systems, their education systems, their law enforcement resources are going to be spread thin, and it's going to start affecting Americans who are paying all of the tax money supporting these programs. And not to mention, on top of all of that, the cost of the illegal immigrants that we're supporting, because when they come here, they're not working. They don't have housing. They don't have food. All of that money is coming from us, and it's costing us, estimated somewhere between $150 and $450 billion a year right now. And that's going to go up because illegal immigration is increasing exponentially. So that's another $1,500 per American. At the same time, we need to reform the legal immigration program. Because we do have people coming over here that are being our doctors and our engineers and our tech workers, and they are contributing to the prosperity. They're building companies. They're creating hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars worth of wealth, and we need to continue that flow coming here. We give out about 85,000 H-1B visas per year. About 60,000 of them go to people coming from India. However, there are country caps for green cards, meaning granting them permanent residency here, of only 10,000 per country. So what's happening to them is we're bringing 60,000 over and we're only allowing 10,000 to become permanent residents. There's now a backlog of 110 years, 1.1 million Indians who are here working in tech as doctors, as engineers, and they will never become a permanent resident or an American citizen. And that's not right. So I want to fix things like that too. When you have a policy like this where you're capping the number of green cards by country, that is not a merit-based system, that's a race-based system. Applications from other countries are not even being filled to that 10,000 quota. So why are we not allowing all of those green cards being given out to go to people who are coming here that we're bringing here that are high-skilled workers and making our country more prosperous? So that's just a quick example of some of the reforms that I would do with legal immigration. And then at the same time, we're letting all these illegal immigrants across the border and are now talking about granting them permanent residency. That's what the administration is moving towards. That's a slap in the face to every single person who came here legally, spent money, time, years of their life, anxiety, trying to get into the country here, and then we refuse to grant them permanent residency after 2 or 3 decades of being here and contributing. When you get on a plane and go somewhere, you expect that whoever is flying the plane is competent and is going to keep you safe, will go around turbulence and try to get you to your destination safely using the best route possible. The problem is that that is not what is happening with our country. That is not what our leadership is doing. And most of us are on this plane just relaxing. We're on our devices, watching the movies, scrolling through social media apps, reclining on our seats, putting on our sleeping masks and falling asleep and just expecting that everything's going to be okay. But it's not, because whoever is flying this plane is flying us into a massive storm. And I think a lot of people are seeing that now. And this plane has not been maintained. The bolts are coming loose. The navigation system has glitches in it. And we don't really know who's flying this plane. We just assume that whoever is behind that cockpit door is going to get us out to the other side. And so now there's more turbulence and people are starting to wake up and are realizing what's going on. Some people are looking out the window and seeing that there's a lot bluer, calmer skies to the side, so why are we flying straight into this massive storm? And some people are even up and asking the flight attendants, we see that we're going straight into a storm, why don't you just change course? And the flight attendants are just telling us to sit down, put your seatbelt back on, and everything will be okay, just trust us. But some people have figured out that whoever is behind that cockpit door does not care about us. They care about other things, and they are deliberately flying into this massive storm. And every minute that passes, this turbulence gets worse and worse and worse. And it's hitting some parts of the country now extremely hard. But this is just starting. This is just starting in New York City. This is just starting in San Francisco. This is just starting in Chicago. And it's not here in this district yet, but it will be. Because you can't have, for example, this many illegal immigrants coming across and growing this exponentially quite fast to have nothing happen here. It's going to be everywhere soon. And our debt is going to blow up and risk an entire financial collapse. Or at the very least, completely gutting Social Security and Medicare for the people who need it. And inflation is destroying everybody up and down the ladder. I just talked to my grandmother 2 weeks ago. She's 90 years old. Her husband, my grandpa, passed away about 10 years ago. He was a World War II vet in the Pacific Theater in the trenches. He almost drowned and he was almost killed in the trenches. They have had a house in Fridley, Minnesota for 47 years, and she's surviving on Social Security. And when I talked to her 2 weeks ago, she said, yeah, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stay here because everything keeps going up. My insurance goes up, my heating bills are going up, and it almost broke my heart. And, I obviously told her, Grandma, just let me know and send some bills my way. If it's just a few $100s, don't worry about it. But the fact that my grandmother, who has lost her vision now, is 90 years old and is sitting in a recliner without her husband anymore, and she has to worry about not being able to keep living in the same house that she's lived in for 47 years and that the mortgage is paid on, that her husband left her. And that's going to happen to more and more people. So we need to get through that cockpit door and push those pilots aside. And I'm willing to be the first one to stand in front of it, but I can't do it alone. I need other people's help. And if we do get through that cockpit door, by the time we do, we're going to be in the eye of the storm. Even if in this election we can begin to turn things around and put enough people in office that can safely control this plane, we're going to already be in a storm. And the path that we came in on is going to be much easier than the path of getting out. And what we're also going to discover if we make it through that cockpit door is that the navigation system has been shorted out, the landing gear has been sabotaged, one of the engines is down, the masks are going to come down in the cabin, and the guys flying the plane, they have parachutes and they're going to breach the cabin door and jump out. And then everyone is going to wake up and be in panic. And this thing is going to crash land. I am just going to pray that the wings don't rip off and that the last engine goes out before it does. And that everyone's seatbelts in the cabins hold, and that I will be able to keep my head in this chaos that's going on. So that we can land soft enough so that injuries are minimized, and we will eventually be able to repair this plane and get it airborne again. I know that everybody here in this room is awake. Some of you still think that we have enough time to change course and go around the storm, but some of you realize that we are going into the storm no matter what. Some of you know that the people in the cockpit are deliberately flying us into the storm, and we can all speculate about what's exactly happening and why, but that's the truth of it. And I've never flown a plane before, and especially not in a hurricane, without a navigation system, with an engine down, no landing gear, and the fuel running out. But I sure as hell am going to try to fly the plane and pull us out of this nosedive and land us as softly as I can. And you know why? Because my daughter is on this plane. My mom and dad are on this plane. My grandma is on this plane. And all of you are on this plane. And your families are on this plane. And I even care about the people who are on this plane who are still asleep, because I know that eventually the turbulence is going to get to them and they're going to wake up. And that's why I have been doing everything I can to get my campaign up and off the ground. That's why I've already spent over $25,000 of my own money and all of my waking hours for the last 2 months working on this when I'm not taking care of my business and my daughter and getting her to and from dance. So I'm just trying to pull together as many people as I can and wake up as many people as I can so that I have helped to get into that cockpit door and begin to turn this around.